Hi, I'm Gabe from Unsolicited Designs, and welcome to Report Cards, a series where I grade every mythic rare from the set based on how unique they are, what they can do beyond being a regular rare, and what creative deck building opportunities they provide. In this video, I'll be giving an overview of the 5 mono-colored mythic Overlords of Duskmourn. I hope I'll earn a like and subscribe from you by the end of the video, and I'm curious to hear about your opinions on these cards and my analysis of them. Now, without further ado, on to the review. There's a new cycle of Titans in town called the Overlords, so let's kick off our review with Overlord of the Mistmoors. For 2 white and 5 generic, you get a 6/6 enchantment creature, Avatar Horror. It has Impending 4. For 2 white and 2 generic, if you cast this spell for its impending cost, it enters with 4 time counters and isn't a creature until the last is removed. At the beginning of your end step, remove a time counter from it. And whenever Overlord of the Mistmoors enters or attacks, create 2 2/1 white insect creature tokens with flying. Grave Titan is a much beloved card, and can prove very overwhelming as it floods the board with zombie tokens. Overlord of the Mistmoors costs 1 more mana to cast, but makes markedly better tokens. While the insects have only 1 toughness, having flying is a massive upgrade. It makes them far more dangerous on offense, as they'll be much harder to block, and far more valuable on defense, as they can keep an eye on the skies. Though they do suffer when it comes to blocking creatures with trample. The price of 7 mana is not exactly something I'm happy to see, since Overlord of the Mistmoors doesn't have any combat relevant keywords like flying or vigilance, but the keyword it does have, impending, means you don't actually have to pay full price for your avatar. Casting it for its impending cost means you get 2 insect tokens up front, and then at the end of 3 turns later, you get Overlord of the Mistmoors as a creature. It won't get to attack the turn it becomes a creature this way, since the time counter is removed during your end step, but it's the same turn you'd be able to cast it for 7 mana, so you aren't actually behind in that sense. And instead, your turn 7 mana is available to be spent elsewhere. Just because Overlord of the Mistmoors isn't a creature while it's impending with time counters, doesn't mean you can't turn it into a creature in other ways, which white is almost uniquely capable of doing. These effects will let you get those attack triggers going sooner than they should be, with the Overlord enjoying some slightly higher power and toughness to boot. Overall, this is a fairly powerful creature with some creative gameplay considerations. For 7 mana, I kind of wish it had a combat keyword, but for 4 mana, it's very reasonable. I may be missing the mark, but I feel that Overlord of the Mistmoors gets a B. Next up is blue, with a design that has me a little down in the dumps. Overlord of the Floodpits. For 2 blue and 3 generic, you get a 5/3 enchantment creature, Avatar Horror. It has Impending 4 for 2 blue and 1 generic. It also has flying, and whenever Overlord of the Floodpits enters or attacks, draw 2 cards, then discard a card. I'm just going to come right out and say it. I am totally disappointed in this design. Sure, the white Overlord doesn't push the envelope all that much, but this one feels totally phoned in. One of the main reasons I can tell this is because it actually does have a combat keyword, which we'll see is unique among these cards. But the triggered ability is devoid of inspiration. Drawing 2 cards and ditching 1 is actually quite good, especially if you can do it turn after turn. But it isn't exciting or unique, and it feels like the rest of the design had to be warped to accommodate it. The only concepts that interest me are that it's an enchantment and the impending ability, which makes this sorcery speed catalog, but with the upside that it'll turn into a creature eventually. There's a little bit of tension with the impending ability, since Overlord of the Floodpits will become a creature on turn 6, but won't be able to attack until turn 7. So the mana savings isn't as much as Overlord of the Mistmoors, and you fall a turn behind in getting the attack trigger. But beyond that decision point, I wish they went further to make this mythic stand out, probably by finding a more interesting triggered ability to balance it around. If you find yourself strongly disagreeing with my assessment, honestly ask yourself how breathtaking you find All-Seeing Arbiter to be, which is a design that I think is vastly superior. You can't spell flood without the F, and that's what Overlord of the Floodpits deserves. Grade F. If the white Overlord was doing a Grave Titan impression, then let's see the black Overlord's Sun Titan impression. Overlord of the Balemurk. For 2 black and 3 generic, you get a 5/5 enchantment creature, Avatar Horror. It has Impending 5 for 1 black and 1 generic. And whenever Overlord of the Balemurk enters or attacks, mill 4 cards, then you may return a non-avatar creature card or a planeswalker card from your graveyard to your hand. Again, similar to an original Titan, but with some variation. This does play well with the mechanic in the set, Delirium, which wants you to have 4 or more different card types in your graveyard. You could have Delirium on turn 2 if you impend Overlord of the Balemurk, so I like how this design ties into what's going on with the set. It also continues the dynamic of paying the impend cost to get a nice mana discount on the spell, but at the price of waiting to get your first attack trigger until the whole turn after you'd be able to if you just cast the creature outright. As for the triggered ability of this Overlord, I feel it's just okay. It will certainly be effective at helping you fill your graveyard if your strategy is self-mill, and I like that it allows you to return either a creature or a planeswalker card, giving it a little more flexibility. As a repeatable effect, it can definitely provide some real value and pose some serious problems for your opponents, as they'll have to deal with seeing your most threatening permanents over and over again. But I don't look at this text and feel excited by the power level or the possibilities. It shares the same problems as the blue and, as we'll see, red Overlords, which is that they're well balanced around being cast with impending, but have their abilities constrained because the effect needs to be both reasonable early game, while also powerful enough as a repeatable ability each turn you attack. And from my perspective, it means a lot of these designs just don't have that mythic uniqueness. Overall, Overlord of the Balemurk is less egregious to me since it has some flexibility to offer, and the impend cost is the most aggressive. But I think this card needs to do a little bit more to feel like a mythic to me. Hopefully my reasoning is clear enough, but I'm giving Overlord of the Balemurk a C.
Next up, let's see if Red's newest Titan can light a fire.
Overlord of the Boilerbilges. For 2 red and 4 generic, you get a 5/5 enchantment creature, Avatar Horror. It has impending 4 for 2 red and 2 generic. When Overlord of the Boilerbilges enters or attacks, it deals 4 damage to any target. Well, it isn't exactly Inferno Titan, but it's painfully close. You get to deal 1 extra point of damage, but you lose out on 1 power and toughness, the damage can't be divided, and there's no fire breathing ability. That's a pretty substantial amount of downgrades. Does the ability to cast this for 4 mana to maybe act as a sorcery speed removal spell, and then eventually get the creature, do enough to balance things out? Yes and no. I think impending is fantastic, and does a lot to help smooth out your gameplay experience, as you won't be sitting there with a 6-drop stranded in your hand. But while all the Overlords would make very good use of having haste, red is the primary color of that ability, and therefore the one most likely to have it available. So by impending this card, you miss out on the opportunity to ship 13 points of damage in a single turn. Regardless, this is another woefully uninspired design. It essentially regurgitates another original Titan card, but doesn't build off it in any noteworthy way, and in fact, does a lot more subtracting than anything else, which is pretty disappointing considering that the Titan cycle is 14 years old. Like the blue Overlord, I think this card is fine from a playability standpoint, but unlike the black Overlord, I don't think this design attempts any creative flexibility. And the bottom line is that Mythics shouldn't be striving to be merely playable chaff. So I'm giving Overlord of the Boilerbilges an F.
And lastly, let's take a look at the new Primeval Titan.
Overlord of the Hauntwoods. For 2 green and 3 generic, you get a 6/5 enchantment creature, Avatar Horror. It has impending 4 for 2 green and 1 generic. And whenever Overlord of the Hauntwoods enters or attacks, create a tapped, colorless land token named Everywhere. That is every basic land type. Okay, so prime time this is not. But that doesn't mean this isn't some exciting text. Again, there's no combat related keyword here, which feels strange, but I applaud the restraint. This lets the focus fall solely on the triggered ability and the new mechanic impending. I'm thrilled to see the land token ability arrive at last. It's something I've looked forward to for a long time, and a concept I suggested in my unredesigns in Murders of Karlov Manor. What the designers have come up with is pretty interesting. You can cast Overlord of the Hauntwoods on 5 and start attacking on turn 6, or set up the impending clock on turn 3 to get your first Everywhere token earlier. This does delay your ability to get more until later, with the Overlord not becoming a creature until the end of turn 6, and the option to attack starting on turn 7. In isolation, I think hard casting this creature and getting more Everywhere tokens by attacking as soon as possible is best, or at least that's what I'm most excited for. But there's something to be said for just treating this as a 3-mana ram spell that turns into a creature spell for free several turns down the line. Again, it winds up saving you some mana to cast the spell, and lets you spend your turn 5 advancing your game plan in other ways. The designers did a great job of giving us a powerful, unique design, which this cycle is sorely lacking. And that also gives us some flexibility in how and when we want to deploy it. This is a fabulous concept, and is hopefully just scratching the surface of future design space. Maybe this decision will torture me down the line, but Overlord of the Hauntwoods is an S-tier mythic. Grade S.
And there you have it, my grades for the 5 mythic overlords of Duskmourn. Do my assessments seem accurate, or do they belong in the Boilerbilges? Thanks so much for watching. I hope I earned a like and subscribe from you, and I'd love it if you'd share this video. If not, thanks for hearing me out. You can follow me on X at UnsolicitedMTG for channel updates, and check back for part 2 of my reviews where I'll witness the monstrosities that lie within. Once again, I'm Gabe from Unsolicited Designs, and who asked me anyways?